Thank you so much for joining us tonight for reading the Bible together. We're so glad to have you here as we continue our journey in the Psalms. We're talking about Psalms that have special New Testament connections, and we're going to dive into Psalm 37 this week. But before we do that, a couple of things. First of all, I would like to remind everyone to be sending us your questions. Okay, we need your questions. The address is on the screen right now. And we need those questions, and we have just a couple more weeks to get those in so that we can address those at the end of our Psalms series. So we'd appreciate you sending those in. And then also, before we dive into Psalm 37, I want to talk about our concept for this week. So we're going to talk about the upside down kingdom. That's the idea that we're going to dig into this week with this psalm. And so the way that we kind of want to look at this is this idea of a lot of times life seems like it's out of control. I think everyone can identify with that at some point in their life, if not right this minute. And it feels like evil is winning and good is losing, and we sort of wonder when God's going to step in. And we have to remember at these times that God brings us what we're going to call an upside down kingdom. And so this idea that we're going to see in this psalm that the meek will inherit the earth, and the idea that in God's time and in God's kingdom, the poor will be rich and the hungry will be full. This idea is something that we need to dig into and bank on, and we need to sort of interpret the scriptures through that lens, if you will, as we look, and the world around us as well, as we look at what's going on. So before we dig into the psalm, we're going to go all the way back to the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel. In 1 Samuel 2, 5 through 8, we hear Hannah's story. Now, before I read about Hannah, let's just remind ourselves about Hannah a little bit. So this is in the time after Moses led the people of Israel out of slavery, and after Israel has started to settle in the promised land, but things sort of go up and down and up and down. And there's a family in charge of the tabernacle, and they're not always doing everything that they should. But there is a tabernacle, and people are worshiping at the tabernacle. And one day the high priest sees this woman praying, but she's not saying anything out loud. So he thinks that she's drunk. And it turns out she's just so upset that she's just praying very, very fervently for a child. And so he blesses her and says that she'll have a child. And she does. And that child ends up being Samuel, the priest. And so when she has this child, she's so overjoyed. This is what she says. Those who were full hire themselves out for food, but those who were hungry are hungry no more. She who is barren has borne 7 children, but she who has had many sons pines away. The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises up. The Lord sends poverty and wealth. He humbles and he exalts. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. So you can see lots of metaphors here that Hannah is using to talk about the ways that God flips things on their head, and that it seems as if things are going terribly, and then all of a sudden he turns things over, turns them upside down, and the ones who were suffering are suddenly and the ones who are weak are suddenly in positions of power. Throughout the prophets and later times in the Old Testament, people who are suffering under occupations, when these foreign governments would come through, they loved this idea. And of course, we all love an underdog anyway. And so we see this theme continuing throughout the Old Testament and even into the New Testament. And I know that you know where the meek will inherit the earth verse comes from, or at least a lot of you do. But before we get to that, let's just look one more place. Let's look at Mary. And what she says, and this is going to sound very similar to what Hannah said. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but he has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. So that's sort of our background, that idea of flipping things on their head. That's something we're going to hold in our minds as we look at Psalm 37. And do you want to read the first 11 verses for us?
Yes, we're going to
We
read.
want you to read the whole thing on your own, though. But
Yes.
he's going to read the first 11
It's
verses.
very long, but we're just looking at the first 11 verses. And we're keep in mind this theme: the meek will inherit the earth and the upside down kingdom. This is Psalm 37, verse 1. Do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass they will soon wither, like green plants they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. So right here you see what it looks like is the evil and the people who do wrong are in power, but the Psalms are saying, trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land, enjoy the safe pasture, and delight in the Lord. And basically he's saying God's going to take care of things eventually. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret. It only leads to evil. For those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land. So all the big, powerful people that seem to be so wealthy and have riches and land are not the ones that are going to end up with the power and the wealth. A little while and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity. So one way of summarizing what's being said here is we're being encouraged to look ahead, to look up, and to look around. Looking ahead, basically we're looking at the long view. God's justice will prevail in the end, and those who have not embraced justice will be dealt with. Looking up basically means we focus on God. And it's easy for us to read these words. Don't fret because of evildoers, but it's very difficult in our own lives to look around and say, look at all the things that are going wrong and these people that are doing bad things. How can God possibly allow this to happen? But we keep looking up. And as the psalm says, don't fret, but trust in the Lord. Trust and take delight. Commit, be still, listen to the Lord, and then look around. And this, I think, the thing here is turn from anger and do good. And so you don't just have to sit there. You can look around and find something to do that will be a good thing in contrast to these people who are doing evil things. And this brings us to our consideration of how this theme is picked up in the New Testament. Some of you have already guessed this one.
So the answer is the Sermon on the Mount. So Jesus comes into this situation of this oppression that is happening from Rome, and so this is really speaking to the people he is talking to at the moment. So he gives this Sermon on the Mount, and it's his big treatise on the upside down kingdom. This speech is his because people aren't publishing essays, at least not in the way we do now, or movies. But so this is his work explaining his philosophy, his campaign, his upside down kingdom. And before he sets everything up, so before he gives this speech, he comes not in power, but as a baby. And he's building up so he builds up to this moment, right? First of all, he comes as a baby to this very poor family, to this nothing town. And Second of all, he recruits all his followers from. Would you say it's fair that most of Jesus' followers are, we would say, the riffraff of society? They're not.
That's what they
they're-
would have been considered by the
That's
by the wealthy.
by
and
the
powerful.
wealthy, yes. So we are not looking at wealthy and powerful people, and we are not looking at scholars. We are looking at fishermen, and so he appoints these leaders who are either uneducated or have terrible reputations. There's a tax collector, so that's one person who's wealthy, but he has such a terrible reputation, he'd be a total outcast in regular Jewish society. And the movement is really picking up steam. So he gives this address on a hillside, not in a temple, not in a city square. There's, all sorts of, amphitheaters and stuff because this is a Roman colony now. But no, he's out in the countryside on the side of a hill. And this is the address that he gives from Matthew 5 that so many of us know. We're going to start in verse 3. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. There's our reference all the way back to Psalm 37, word for word. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So again, these very backward things. Why would you want to be why would it be a blessing to be persecuted, and why would you want to be somebody who has no power and no wealth? Well, because in God's kingdom, he has a completely different set of values and priorities from those of the world.
So Jesus brings this message to his followers. Might does not make right. Wealth and power are not what God is looking for, and are not, as many people have thought, always an indication of God's favor. Meek is not weak, but it is having hope in the Lord, hope in God. There's no need to grasp for power for ourselves, because God sees what we have need of, and He eventually will take care of that. God is establishing a new kingdom, and He is calling all on followers who will look up and focus on Him and His priorities, look ahead and realize what that His justice is coming, and then look around to do good in the world.
So as we contemplate how to look up, look ahead, and look around, I feel, for me, that the hardest part is the looking up part. And that's probably the most important part, so it makes sense, I guess, that it's the hardest part. But it's very difficult to pull your eyes away. In today's society where we're bombarded with constant stimulation and constant things to worry about, it's hard to pull your eyes away from that and look up and look to God and His priorities. But it's essential, because that gives us the ability to look ahead and take that long view, and also that gives us the capacity and the wisdom to look around and see what God's priorities will be for us. And psalm after psalm after psalm urges us to set our minds on God in this way, to contemplate God and His kingdom and His priorities rather than our own. So probably that in and of itself is the answer. If we're having trouble looking up, we have to return to the Psalms again and again as a way to focus ourselves on God and His priorities. So again, we hope you'll also read the rest of this psalm. And we also hope you'll join us for church this Sunday. Gifts is the topic of the sermon that Pastor Rivas is going to bring us this Sunday. And we really look forward to seeing you there.